What's going on in there?
What?
That light!
Oh, the red. Yeah, it's a chicken roaster sign. It's right across from my window.
Can't you shut the shades?
They are shut.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we're going to be talking about the Triple-A Memphis Redbirds, who play in Memphis, Tennessee. Later on in this episode, I'll be speaking with designer Dan Simon, friend of the podcast, who created this brand. I'll be speaking with Megan May of Backbeat Tours in Memphis about Beale Street, which features prominently in this logo. And then, of course, Dan Simon will be back at the end of the episode with one of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I am so happy to have on Baseball by Design, Alex Coyle, who is the team broadcaster for the Memphis Redbirds. Alex, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. It's a busy day here at AutoZone Park. I'm sure you can hear in the background, grounds crew getting things ready for another ball game here at the ballpark.
It is a beautiful ballpark. I have been there once. It was several years ago. It was the last game, technically the last game of spring training, and you were playing the Battle of the Birds. I was there representing SportsLogos.net, and I actually got to talk to a couple of players on the field, including Paul Goldschmidt back then with the Cardinals. And so the reason I bring this up, you all, the Memphis Redbirds, have a very close relationship with your parent club, the St. Louis Cardinals, as part of your brand, but you avoided the cardinal sin, as it were, of being named directly for your parent club. How important is that relationship with the parent club in the brand of the team?
Well, I think it's a little bit of the best of both worlds, really. You have the St. Louis Cardinals brand, the classic jersey, the bird on the bat, which was the original logo here in Memphis as well, and the immediate brand recognition that you have from that. But you also have your own brand that you can grow in the city and make an impact here in Memphis. And the Cardinals are interesting. A lot of clubs used to do this. The Cubs still have a number of their affiliates named the Cubs, right? The Cardinals have Springfield named after themselves, and Palm Beach named after themselves as well.
Yeah.
So it's similar but different from what we've seen in this organization, and as far as the other names. But I think I like the name. I think it's different. A lot of people ask, "Oh, what's a Redbirds?" Oh, it's just a Cardinal, just another name for it, and another way to grow your own brand.
This, you mentioned the birds on the bat, and for a little while, the Memphis Redbirds actually had that a version of that as their primary logo, and some of the other affiliates that you named that were named for the Cardinals had that birds on a bat. But then for the 2017 season, Dan Simon created the award-winning. It won one of the Creamer Awards on Chris Creamer's SportsLogos.net. A new brand that really doubles down on Memphis, highlights the sort of Memphis-city of the brand, with like the neon and the connection to Beale Street, and really made it Memphis's own. How important was that rebrand and the sort of current version of the brand for the team?
Well, I think the organization at the time was looking for, and really still is looking for, another thing to attach itself to the city, and be more of a Memphis team, right? And looking for ways to connect with, especially the downtown area, and bringing people downtown. And Beale Street is called the most iconic street in America, by many. And so when you walk down Beale Street, even during the day, all you can see is neon signs lining the street on the right and left. And so that's one of the things that they look for in that rebrand. It's a beautiful logo. It's very up to date. It still feels modern, even 7 years after the official rebrand, and so everything still looks fresh. The signs are still look great. So I think it's another thing, again, to connect with the city of Memphis, and kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, not necessarily, just playing off of, oh, we're the Cardinals affiliate. We're Memphis's professional baseball team. We play 2 blocks away from Beale Street, where you're going to see all those neon signs. You can go there before and after the game at AutoZone Park and have a good time at both spots.
There are a couple of really fun alternate brands included in this, and I'll speak with Dan about these alternates. But
Mhm.
one of the ones I think that is particularly fun is the full body of the bird with his back sort of 3/4 turned, and looks like he's getting ready to fire a pitch into the catcher, and he's looking at you like you're the catcher, and here comes the pitch. That's one of my favorites. What do you see as the marks that people really respond to?
Yeah, so the Dirty Bird logo that you're referring to,
Dirty
that
bird.
is a big fan favorite. That's we wear those on the uniforms on our Sunday alternate baby blues. We also have a couple of different Dirty Bird hats with that as well. We have one that's tri-toned. It's a red bill, white front, and baby blue on the back. And then we added a kind of a pinstripe hat. It's red bill, red pinstripes, white hat with the Dirty Bird on the front, and we wear those with our brand new red alternate uniforms. Ironically, the Redbirds had not had a red top uniform in a long time, and we brought those back this year. And we wear that brand new Dirty Bird hat. So that is my favorite logo as well. The classic music note M. I guess it's kind of a can't really say classic, but it just looks classy on the uniforms, especially on the road with the navy blue hats. It's just, you look at that, you're like, all right, that's Memphis as well. You see the M, you see the music and the blues and how much that made an impact on the city of Memphis as well. We still have the old cardinal in the middle of the clock as I look up to right center field above the video board. But I'd say the one you brought up, the Dirty Bird, that's the one people love to see. It's kind of the alternate Sunday look that does pretty well in the team store as well.
Well, that classic M logo, it's doing a lot there, right? It's a musical note, which obviously is a connection to Memphis and its musical history. It's the letter M for Memphis, and it still has the neon there. So there's a lot going on. You referenced it as the a classic logo, and you said, well, but it's not that old. That sort of highlights the fact that this brand, it does feel very classic, and it is a largely, even though it's a cartoon bird in many ways, it feels very serious. And I know that that's intentional by the franchise to not go down the path of some of the wacky stuff that we see out there, which I also love. I mean, I love this logo, but I also love that wacky stuff. I'll tell you how much I love this logo. I'm a Phillies fan, and I have Memphis Redbirds stuff, even though the Cardinals are a little bit tough for me to take. They've been tormenting my Phillies for far too long here. So it's, but I'm still, I'm going to go out there and buy like a great minor league baseball logo. But to get back to the question that I was asking, it's clearly intentional that this is not a silly logo. It's not a silly minor league baseball logo. It's a serious professional baseball logo. How important to the franchise is that decision?
Well, I think, the seriousness of, the level, right? A lot of these guys are either on the 40-man roster, have had major league experience, or are prospects trying to make the impact on the big league club. And I think that's one of the things, especially in a city like Memphis, you look at the sports that they have here. They have a major Division I school in Memphis Tigers that compete in football, but especially basketball. And then you also have the Memphis Grizzlies, who are competing to win every single day and have that the grind city mentality that their brand brings to the city. It's a very serious and competitive culture of sports here in Memphis. And so I think, having that type of brand here in the city as well kind of, draws people to AutoZone Park. Yes, that we have the promotions of minor league baseball to get a little wacky here and there and have some things. But I think it's important to have stuff for everybody, for sure, but especially that fan that is 4 hours away from St. Louis and maybe can't go to a Cardinals game, or maybe they're an Atlanta Braves fan and they come see the Gwinnett Stripers when they come here, feels like 18 times a year. and they want to come here and watch those guys compete on the field. I think that kind of brand and the way we kind of carry ourselves in terms of everything from structure of pregame activities and stuff like that, it feels like, all right, this is a competitive baseball game and ready to happen.
You mentioned some of the alternate identities. It's not something that the Redbirds do a lot of, but there have been some. Are there any particular ones that you enjoy or that you feel like the fans particularly enjoy?
So I think we actually have a pretty cool one coming up.
Oh,
We did this last year, but on August 10th, we're going to play as the Memphis Red Sox
okay.
as part of the Nine. That is the local Negro League team that played. It's one of the longest standing Negro League teams from back then. Josh Gibson actually played his first professional game as a member of the Memphis Red Sox.
Wow.
The funny story on him. He played one game. It was a game. It was an away game in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He had a couple of hits in the game, and the manager was like, "I don't think he's going to be a very good baseball player. He doesn't belong on our team." Obviously, he went on to now lead Major League statistics in a number of categories. But so he played his first game for the Memphis Red Sox. We're going to be playing as that alternate identity and have some really cool stories to tell along with that. That's another really classic look. Red Sox across the chest. It's a slight pinstripe uniform and a really good throwback with that we will wear on August 10th. Something that we did last year that we're going to bring back this year as well.
I've always wondered this as the broadcaster for a minor league baseball team with teams changing their identities, both the opponent and the team that you broadcast for. Does it trip you up having to call them something different, every third game, or does it get confusing?
So I've been in a lucky position, I guess, where I have always been directed. Everything's the Redbirds. You mentioned the uniforms and everything, but staying with Redbirds' brand, doing broadcasts and everything. Like we played as the Malmo Oat Milkers. Of course, every single minor league team is going to play as the Oat Milkers this season. And, reference the jerseys a little bit. Every Thursday, I should have mentioned this earlier, we play as the Memphis Chicks, the former minor league team here in Memphis before they moved to West Tennessee to Jackson, Tennessee, and became the West Tennessee Diamond Jacks. And the Redbirds came into Memphis. Team that Bo Jackson played for. So even then, like I'm still calling everything the Redbirds. So I'm lucky that I haven't had to be in the position to possibly trip up on those. And but I've heard there was the Old Milkers won whoever they were playing for last night. And the broadcaster had a pretty good call with it's like the Braves / Oat Milkers win the ball game and stuff like that. So I'm good. I haven't had to do that. I'm in a lucky position where they want to keep the brand still the Redbirds for all the broadcasts. So
I am steadfastly boycotting all things Oat Milkers on this podcast. I'm not going to ask you to comment on that in your capacity officially with the team, but I object to the whole premise of the Oat Milkers promotion. Okay, there is also I was wondering if you could tell me the story of the probably the silliest alternate brand that I've seen associated with Memphis is the Memphis Turtles. It has a cartoon turtle with a music note M on his on the front of his shell, and he's singing into a microphone. What is the Memphis Turtles?
So I'll have to brush up on the exact thing behind that, but they were a professional baseball team in the city of Memphis. So dating back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a professional baseball team in Memphis that changed names every 2 to 3 years just to try to figure out something and get something going in the city. Playing against teams like from Indianapolis and Fort Wayne, Indiana, and in the leagues traveling around. So the Turtles was one of the names that they had. They were actually a former professional team in the city of Memphis.
So this, existing AAA franchise has been the Cardinals affiliate ever since this franchise debuted in 1998. But baseball in Memphis goes back to 1877, and I don't know this off the top of my head. This is from the article that I wrote back in 2017. But this was the list of team names that I found for teams in Memphis over the years since 1877. Are you ready? It's the Reds, Grays, Browns, the theme there, Giants, one called the Fever Germs.
Yep, we
Seems
have
like-
an alternate identity there. We haven't used it yet. I don't know if it's in the plans too, but that was one that was floated around.
I can't wait to see the Fever Germs take the field. More here. Lambs, Egyptians, Memphis Egyptians. Okay.
Yep.
Turtles, like you said, and then the Chickasaws, the Blues, and the Chicks. So it is a rich vein of past identities that the team could draw on here to come up with some alternates, some throwbacks. The Fever Germs is the one I want to see the most.
That was the first thing when I came here. We were talking about it in meetings. So what about the Fever Germs? I'm like, what? Like, where does that come from? But to know the history of everything and to see some of those names. We played as the Blues a couple of times. I believe the most recent time we played as them was 2022, but that's some really cool merchandise as well that we have available in the team store. But we've got plenty of names that we could draw from to rotate through in years to come.
All right, Alex, before I get you out of here, I did want to ask too, I mean, because it's part of the larger story of the brand is the ballpark itself. I mentioned that it's a beautiful ballpark, 25 years old now, and counting, and hopefully no plans to replace it anytime soon. Downtown, brick all over the place. I really enjoyed getting to go there just that one time so far. How much does that ballpark itself play into the brand and the identity of the team?
Look, I think going back to classic, that's immediately what I thought when I first drove up to the stadium when I got the job. There was a book series that I read when I was younger. It was called the Barnstormers for the first 3 books, and then it changed into the Sluggers series. It was a series of 6 books. Lauren Long, I believe, he was either the author or the illustrator, but he was involved deeply in that book. That was the name I remember. But it was about like a group of barnstormers right after the Civil War and playing around in the late 1800s and playing in different cities. And they talk about the old classic ballparks that they would go to and some of the brick streets that they would drive down. And when I drove up to the ballpark here in Memphis, that's immediately what I went back and thought of, just the classic nature of it. And the ballpark was built in 1998. This is the 25th anniversary season of Redbirds baseball here at the ballpark. And again, it was built at the time where everybody was looking for the classic look of ballparks. You mentioned the brick all around downtown. And you walk up to the ballpark and it's still brick facade with the neon sign kind of adds to that look a little bit. But it was a ballpark that they wanted to build to major league specs for a possible expansion if they got some good looks. It ended up being the Grizzlies that moved to town because of AutoZone Park. That's an interesting story to go down another time. But the level, like the broadcast booth is major league caliber with a great angle. Everything just feels so classic baseball here, and the logo contributes to that, and the brand overall comes all together, which just makes it a classic feeling.
Well, it really is a fantastic identity. I'm looking forward to talking to Dan about the logo itself, but yeah, the whole baseball experience there is really consistent with this identity that the Cardinals themselves have established, and that baseball in Memphis it's well done. So Alex, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting about that and your role. And it's always fun for me to talk to team broadcasters too, because I think you bring a really unique perspective to the team and the community. So thank you very much. And before I let you go, where can people find you and the team on social media and online?
You can follow the team at Memphis Redbirds on Twitter, Memphis Redbirds on Facebook, even some TikTok if anybody's into that. You can find me on Twitter at Alex_Coyle, and then you can tune into Redbirds broadcasts on MLB.tv, MILB.tv, Bally Live, MLB.com, MemphisRedbirds.com for the audio.
You guys are everywhere. Alex, thank you so much. This has been fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everyone, welcome back. As listeners to this podcast, you, of course, know Dan Simon, who brings us his Studio Simon Stumper every single week. But, of course, the reason Dan is associated with this podcast is because he is an amazing designer of logos and brands and identities for minor league baseball teams, among other sports work that you do. But the minor league baseball is really your bread and butter. Dan Simon is obviously the creator of this award-winning, Creamer Award-winning Memphis Redbirds brand. Dan Simon, hello. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic. Thank you. We're here at basically the midway point of the 2024 Major League Baseball season. Last night was the All-Star game. All's good.
A record 8 Philadelphia Phillies on the All-Star team last night.
And 3 of the 4 starting infielders for the National League were Phillies, and all 3 of them recorded base hits in last night's game.
It was like the 80s all over again. It was like those Schmidt, Rose, Boa teams, right? Like, so anyhow, yeah, the All-Star game was fun. The uniforms made me want to claw my eyes out with a fork. So I did not enjoy the visual branding of the All-Star game.
Yeah, that's the reality is that dislike for those uniforms, not just this year's design, but the fact that players are not wearing their team uniforms. It's virtually a universal dislike. I would say it's at least 90% of the people, including Bryce Harper, who said this in an interview yesterday or the day before. They want the players in their team uniforms.
Yeah.
They all want that. And Major League Baseball, no, they've got to do these, and they're not even doing a good job with them.
It's 100%. I miss those days when, you'd see it just drove home the sort of team pride. You have league pride, right? Like, but then it drove home that team pride. You'd see your brand out there on the field, that the pajamas that you root for every day during the baseball season.
Right. It's also cool seeing all these different uniforms on the field at one time. It's really neat to see.
Yeah.
And these visually unappealing uniforms they have instead are, nobody wants them.
Dan, you often compliment me on my ability to segue from one subject to the subject at hand. And I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to take a hard right turn and say, let's talk about your Memphis Redbirds brand. This brand that you created, Dan, it's one of my favorite things about it is the way it walks the line between paying tribute to the parent club without being named for the parent club. And I know that you didn't come up with the name, but you worked with the team to find ways to make it really hyper local. And that localness, I think, can be found most in your use of neon in the brand and tying it to Memphis's Beale Street. When you were coming into this process, knowing how closely tied that Redbirds brand is to the St. Louis Cardinals, how much of a focus of this process was it for you to find something local and to differentiate it from the Cardinals?
Well, it was priority one was making it local. I worked directly with team owner Peter Freund, who had just recently purchased the team. This would be in 2016. And he stated right off the bat that they love their affiliation with the St. Louis Cardinals. They did not want to downplay that. If anything, they wanted to celebrate it, but their current identity and most notably their uniforms made it look like the St. Louis Cardinals were playing in Memphis Tennessee. By the way, say this about the Cardinals, and I would say a lot of people feel similarly. It's one of, if not the nicest jersey in major leagues, if not all sports. It is, the birds on the bat. It's the script. It's just a beautiful, beautiful jersey. So, and so the players looked good, but it just at the risk of being redundant, it just looked like the Cardinals were playing in Memphis, and he wanted Peter Freund. He stated right up front was he wanted this to be Memphis's team without losing the connection to the Cardinals. So that was what I was tasked with. And what the challenge was to determine, okay, if we're going to make this visually say this is Memphis's team, what visually represents Memphis? Memphis has a lot of things going for it. It's a great city. It's a river city, so you've got the river, you've got the bridges, you've got the music from Sun Studio to B.B. King, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison, rock and roll, the blues, soul music, gospel, etc. You've got the food, the barbecue, the Southern food. You've got, well, all manner of things. So we talked about all that. A lot of things were brought up, but what we came to realize fairly quickly was that Beale Street kind of encapsulated all of those things. Beale Street, for those who don't know, is an area, a district, a neighborhood in downtown Memphis that is flush with music venues, restaurants, shops, and all of these things. And one of the things they seem to all have in common is, if not all of them, many of them have these beautiful neon signs outside of their establishments. To make, as a bonus, Beale Street is located just down the street from AutoZone Park, where the Memphis Redbirds play. It's half a mile, easy walk from Beale Street to AutoZone Park and vice versa. So it's right there, basically in their backyard. And so we identified, basically it came down to this. What would the Memphis Redbirds brand look like if they were an establishment on Beale Street? And that's what guided us towards the logo set that you have, that is the topic of this discussion.
Well, one of the things obviously that's notable about Beale Street is the music that happens there. I have been to Beale Street. It is a very cool, very richly visual environment, right? Like, especially at nighttime, it's like, it is a saturated visual environment and a lot of music establishments. And so one of the marks that you came up with in this brand was a musical note, looks like a quarter note that you have fashioned into a neon letter M. So that brand has like three things going on in it, right? Like, it's got the music, it's got the letter M, and it's got the neon. Is that the mark that you hang in the window? Is that the one that is on your sign? Is that the identifier for your establishment if the team is an establishment on Beale Street?
Well, that has actually already not only been asked and answered. Peter Freund, the team owner, when he does things, he does them right. And in addition to having this brand identity created, he then had a neon sign made of the primary logo. I envisioned the primary logo as what the sign would have looked like if it was hanging out, if the Memphis Redbirds were an establishment on Beale Street. And so he had this big giant neon sign made that hangs on the exterior of AutoZone Park. Now, as a follow-up to that, there's this connection to soccer because there is a USL team, expansion team, that Peter Freund brought to Memphis that plays in AutoZone Park. And I did that identity as well. And Peter had a big giant neon sign made of that primary logo as well. So the answer to your question is I would view the primary logo as the signage, and it actually became real signage.
Let's talk about the bird, Dan. The bird on the original Cardinals logo looks like it's going to fly away if you take a step towards it. I would describe the expression on that bird's face as suspicious. The bird in your Redbirds logo is obviously based on that bird. There's some visual ties to the original Redbird there, but the expression is different. I have used the word smirk before in describing the look on the face of some of the logos you've designed. Obviously, the Daytona Tortuga's sea turtle has that smirk on his face, but this bird that you have created with the expression on his face, he looks like if you took a step towards him, he might take a step towards you as well. You know, he's not flittering away. He's going to welcome that advance and invite you to bring it on here. So obviously, a very close visual tie between the Cardinals logo and your logo, but different expressions on the face. Obviously, that was intentional when you were creating this brand.
Well, yes, and there was something specific that led to it. It comes directly from the St. Louis Cardinals. The St. Louis Cardinals have a legacy logo. I would imagine that's a term we use in the biz to refer to an old logo, not necessarily in their current set. It is a cardinal, anthropomorphized cardinal bird. I guess that's redundant to say cardinal bird. And it is holding a baseball. He's like a pitcher holding a baseball behind his back. You're viewing him from the back, but then he turns his head towards the viewer, so he's looking back at you. And that's known as the Dirty Bird logo. And Peter wanted to do something based on that piece of artwork. So we did our own version of that character, and the look on the face is fairly similar to the original one by the Cardinals. The original one by the Cardinals is a bit angrier looking.
The Cardinals Dirty Bird looks like a angry old man who's about to bean you in the head because he doesn't like your stance, whereas your Dirty Bird looks like a pitcher who he knows that you are going to be surprised by the pitch that you're about to throw here. He knows you're going to miss this one by a foot.
Right. Good luck trying to hit the pitch that's about to come your way.
Well, it's a really fun brand. You and I have talked about the distinction between the teams that go with a more serious professional feeling look and the teams that go with a more fun, sort of cartoony, family friendly look. This obviously errs on the side of the more serious, the paying tribute to the fact that these are professional athletes who have nearly made it to the very highest level of their sport. And so all amazing athletes who deserve to be treated like professionals. It's a terrific brand, one of my favorites, even though I'm a Phillies fan and the Cardinals and their supposed self-proclaimed best fans in baseball drive me a little crazy. I still like this brand. So Dan, we'll see you back here very shortly for Studio Simon Stumper. In the meantime, thanks so much. And everyone go find Dan on Instagram at @studio_Simon and online at studiosimon.net.
Okay, I'll be right back with that stumper, Paul.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm so pleased to be joined right now by Megan May, who is the Vice President at Backbeat Tours in Memphis. Megan, hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh man, I'm super excited about this because Beale Street is such a cool place in the United States of America, right? Like Beale Street is iconic. And
well, we think so.
Well, I'm sure you do. The Memphis Redbirds have created a brand that ties to Beale Street with its preponderance of neon. So just real basic question, just sort of right out the chute here. What is so iconic about Beale Street, and what is the big deal with neon?
Well, oh gosh, that's a tough question. So, I mean, like you said, Beale Street is just so iconic to Memphis history and Memphis culture, especially. In fact, we were Beale Street was actually named the most iconic street in America by USA Today in 2014. So it just kind of solidified in our mind what we already knew, and that's that we're better than everybody else. But as far as like how Beale Street plays into the larger picture of Memphis history and culture, I mean, it's not incorrect to say that Beale Street is truly the heart of Memphis. It's not geographically the center of Memphis, but it's where everything happens. It's where you want to be. It's where people go when they come to Memphis. When they think of Memphis, they probably think of two things. They think of Beale Street and they think of Elvis. So
And barbecue.
maybe barbecue.
All
It's
right.
like, yeah, it's definitely up there.
So what is it? If you've never been to Memphis, what is it that you would find on Beale Street? What makes it iconic?
So today it's just, it is our number one entertainment district. We've got clubs, that entire entertainment district is really just 2 blocks. So it's a very concentrated area. Beale Street itself is only about a mile long. It starts, at the foot of the foot of Beale Street is in the Mississippi River, basically. And then it kind of winds up through town. And like I said, it's only about a mile long, but just that 2 blocks between 2nd Street and 4th Street, or Ida B. Wells Avenue now as it's known, is really, it's our number one entertainment district. And it is jam-packed with shops and restaurants and barbecue joints and live music venues. And so, I mean, you really, it's not incorrect to say that it is truly the heart of Memphis. So when you get down there, you're immediately kind of overwhelmed with the smell of the food that's coming out of every single place and the sounds of live music, both rock and roll, rockabilly, R&B, blues, jazz. I mean, it's coming from all directions. And then you've got these really old buildings. I mean, Beale Street was laid out in 1841, and then kind of its heyday of activity was anywhere from about the 1880s to the 1920s. And a lot of those buildings have been maintained. The facade of a lot of those buildings is exactly the way it was when it was built in 1890, 1900, 1901, whatever. And so you're thrown back into the past looking at the facade of all these buildings, but then you're kind of inundated with everybody's neon signs. So of course, if you need to orient somebody to Memphis and they're walking along Main Street, you literally can tell them, walk until you see the neon forks and walk until you see the neon crown. And that's the 2 restaurants at Beale and 2nd, which are Blue City Cafe and BB King Blues Club. And so you can really kind of help orient people. There's another one at Beale and 3rd, or BB King Boulevard, which it's Alfred's on Beale Street, and it's been there for umpteen years. They're kind of a staple, but their neon is a microphone, like one of those freestanding mics that the radio DJs used to use, and so it's neon, and so you can tell people about that too. I mean, just being down there is just it's sight, it's sound, it's smell, it's you're seeing the Beale Street Flippers do their acrobatics all the way down Beale Street. Last night we actually had the Grizz line out there, which is they're the drum line for the Grizzlies. And so that it's always really, really fun. It's a good time on Beale Street pretty much all the time.
So at the time of this recording, you are fresh off having attended the 30th anniversary of the opening of BB King's Club.
Yeah.
Who are the other musicians in addition to BB King? The other, notable figures who you would associate with Beale Street historically?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, yeah, like I said, I've said it probably 3 or 4 times now, BB King.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, W.C. Handy was the father of the blues. He wrote the very first blues song down, wrote it in sheet music form. It had been kind of passed around person to person before that, but W.C. Handy, William Christopher Handy, in 1906, sat down at Pee Wee's Saloon, which today is the Tin Roof on Beale Street, and he figured out the musical notation of blues music and wrote it down in sheet music form. And so it made it to where this art form of blues music was then more easily distributable among the masses. And so anybody at that point could learn how to play blues music. So of course you got W.C. Handy, and then followed right, not long behind that, B.B. King, and then that kind of gives way to these other blues singers. And specifically, I love the story of all the female blues singers. Lily Mae Glover was a fantastic blues artist in her own right in the early 1900s, and she was actually discovered singing in a barber shop. You had barbershops and grocery stores and pharmacies and hotels and hat shops and doctors' offices and dentists and lawyers' offices on Beale Street. But then when those places closed, 5 o'clock, day's over, you got to close up and go home. They would then turn around and reopen as blues clubs at night.
So you are, as I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, you're the vice president for Backbeat Tours.
Yeah.
I was looking on your website. It was saying how quickly tours fill up, so you better book them well in advance. When visitors come to Memphis and they take your tour of Beale Street, what do they want to know? What are the questions that they have? What are they most surprised by?
The big question we get now is, hey, I saw that building in the Elvis movie. Is that really where that happened? Or so we get a lot of that question. And really, as far as Beale Street goes, probably the biggest question is, why and how has it kind of survived through everything that Memphis has been through. And that really points to the Memphis spirit, I think. People who are from Memphis, like myself, I'm actually a 5th generation Memphian. There's this certain grit to us. And, we had the Civil War in the 1860s. Right on the heels of that was yellow fever in 1870s to 1880s. And then we had the turn of the century, then the Great Depression. And then in the 60s, of course, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I mean, all these things, any one of those things could have and probably would have killed a lesser city. But we made it through all of that, and we're still making it.
Well, you also mentioned before we started recording that you personally have an involvement with baseball and softball, that you have played and that you're a longtime fan. Obviously, there's a rich history of baseball in Memphis as well,
Yeah.
and so I'm curious, as a person who gives tours and who expounds on the history of the city, what is the importance of baseball to the city of Memphis?
But
Okay.
I really think that baseball, of course, it's America's pastime, but for us, in a lot of ways, I feel like baseball gave Memphians kind of an out to some of the less pleasant things that were happening in the greater history of Memphis. Baseball has kind of always been there for us.
Yeah.
We've had many different team names all the way back to 1877 with our very first team, the Fever Germs. The one thing that is kind of always consistent with Memphis teams specifically is that we can sell out a stadium. Like every time we can sell out a stadium. A lot of times, if you go to a Redbirds game now, if you want to buy your tickets the day of, and Memphis is a notoriously last-minute ticket sales city, so a lot of people are buying their tickets the day of. A lot of times when you get there for like a 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock game, the only spots you're going to have are on the bluff in the outfield. And it's kind of sitting room only, bring your blankets and your picnic baskets kind of deal.
What was your position when you played?
I was a catcher, actually. So Tim McCarver, big fan, loving that he came from not only played for the Chicks, but like he started out at Christian Brothers, which is a local high school here. So he's from here, and then he went on to play for the Chicks, and of course he went on to play for the Cardinals, and then the Phillies, and of course that's where he was. I was a World Series catcher for them, and then went on to ESPN, and made it into the Hall of Fame for sportscasting. So,
all right, the last question for you here. If
all right.
I'm, as I said, I'm visiting Memphis in October. I'll be there for a wedding. If I am going on my own to Beale Street and I have a couple hours, I want to grab a bite to eat, I want to grab a drink, and I want to hear some music, understanding that you give tours and you maybe can't play favorites here, but do you have a suggested itinerary for me where I can grab a bite to eat, I can grab a drink and go see some music?
Anywhere that you land on Beale Street is gonna have at least two out of those three things. But probably my favorite place on Beale Street for all three of those things is probably Alfred's on Beale Street. And I mentioned it just a little while ago. Alfred's on Beale, it's right, I mean, it is smack dab in the middle of the entertainment district. It's right at Beale and Third. It's across the street from Rum Boogie Cafe and Silky O'Sullivan's, and they've got a great patio. They've got a really cool indoor space. They actually, at Alfred's, they actually have the original letters from Stax Records.
Very cool.
It says Stax right over their stage area. And the Stax Museum, as you well know, is not in the original Stax recording building. That building was torn down and then they rebuilt it as the museum. But the letters that were on the front of that building are now housed at Alfred's. And so it's just it's a really cool space. The building itself has a really cool history in the kind of African American heritage. It was the first African American run bank in Memphis, and like I said, it's right smack dab in the middle, so it's really great people watching. They have awesome drinks. Their bartender, if you get Mitch, he is the best. Yeah,
All right.
you kind of can't go wrong.
I lied to you. I have one more question because
Please.
the Redbirds brand is tied to Beale Street through the use of neon here.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite neon sign, or are there specific signs that folks should look out for? I know you mentioned a couple earlier in the interview.
Yeah, so probably the most iconic ones are going to be the one outside BB King's Blues Club, and I have a soft place in my heart for the neons at Blue City Cafe, because it's three forks and they undulate back and forth, so that's pretty cool. And Silky O'Sullivan's is our Irish pub, and so they have a big neon shamrock. And yeah, they're all so great. They really, really are. They're all very unique. You won't find them anywhere else because these are not chains. They're unique to Memphis. So
I lied again. I still have one more question for you because your name is Megan May. You've got two letters M in your initials there. You must love the Redbirds logo with the M and the musical notes and the neon. That must be your favorite, right?
I absolutely do. I was so happy. I was thrilled when they unveiled the newest logo for the Redbirds. What was this? Probably 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
When they unveiled it, I was like, yeah, I could get that. I could get that as a tattoo, and it would make total sense.
It really would.
I grew up going to Chick Stadium and watching the Chicks play with my parents. And so when they when they opened up AutoZone Park in 2000, they opened up in the middle of downtown, right across the street from the Peabody. A lot of people were disappointed to lose Chick Stadium, Tim McCarver Stadium, but moving it downtown, I think, was a genius move for the Redbirds and for baseball in Memphis, because it made it so accessible. Our downtown core is so walkable, and so I mean, people that are staying at the Peabody who've probably never been to a baseball game before. It's right across the street. It's across the street. So even if you're not into baseball, you're going to hear it happening. And I happen to remember my sophomore year of high school, I went to prom, and our prom was on the rooftop of the Peabody. And from the rooftop of the Peabody, you can look down just across the street and you can see into the stadium. And there was a game happening that night, and I was so mad that I was missing.
That's amazing, because my first thought was just like, yeah, I'd have an angry prom date because I'd be watching the game from the prom. So
my prom date was very mad.
Oh no. Well, you had the wrong prom date, I guess.
It's okay. I didn't marry him. So
Megan, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast. We've mentioned Backbeat Tours a couple of times here. Where can people find you and your tour company online, and how do they book a tour, and how far in advance do they have to book a tour when they're going to Memphis?
So first two questions, super easy. Where can they find us? Where can they learn about our tours and buy tickets? Backbeattours.com. All one word.
Super easy.
Back like the opposite of front, beat like the beat of a drum, tours with an S.com. We have 7 different tours that we offer every day. And how far in advance? I'd say as soon as possible.
Awesome. Megan, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Best of luck and see you in October.
Awesome. See you soon.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Guess who's back? It's Dan Simon of Studio Simon, designer extraordinaire, with not more words about the logo that he created for the Memphis Redbirds, but rather a Studio Simon stumper where Dan tries his darndest, his dandest, every week to stump me with one of his Studio Simon stumpers. Dan, I would ask you how you're doing, but guess what? We already have established that you are fantastic. So let's just jump right into a stumper.
Okay. Sometimes with our stumpers, we talk about mascots, and that is going to be the case again today. This is not the stumper question, but
Okay.
do you know the name of the Memphis Redbirds mascot?
No.
Oh, I could have made that the question. But I'm going to tell you because I've already got my question written out. So the Memphis Redbirds mascot is a little bit of a mouthful, Rocky the Rockin' Redbird.
Huh.
And that's Rocky, Rockey for some reason.
Okay.
And Rockin' is N apostrophe. And that his legal name on his mascot birth certificate, Rocky the Rockin' Redbird. Prior to the Memphis Redbirds' inaugural season as an expansion team in the Pacific Coast League, which was 1998, the St. Louis Cardinals Triple-A affiliate from 1982 to 1997 was right here in my current hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, the Louisville Redbirds. With that in mind, our Studio Simon stumper today asks, what was the name of the Louisville Redbirds mascot? Was it A, Billy Bird, B, Lou Bird, or C, Fred Bird?
Now, this is interesting because I know that Fred Bird is a thing. I have met Fred Bird at a River City Rascals game, which, by the way, was the first minor league baseball game I ever went to with Ranger Amy, maybe 10, 12 years ago, long before we started dating. We were near St. Louis for work, and we went to a River City Rascals game, and Fred Bird was there on site. So that's neither here nor there, though.
Well, it is here. It might be here or there.
Well, so
established
there is a Fred Bird. The question is whether Fred Bird was the mascot of the Louisville Cardinals. Lou Bird is the thing that popped into my head. That would be sort of like the most obvious one that they would go with Lou Bird. Billy Bird, I don't have any reason to suspect that it would be Billy Bird, which means it's probably the answer. But because Fred Bird is a bird who I have actually met and I know exists, and who, if I recall, taunted me. It must have been in 2011 that this happened, because it was right after the Cardinals had beaten the Phillies. I was wearing my Phillies stuff, and he was pointing at my Phillies stuff, and or maybe it was 2012 because the Cardinals had just won the World Series the year before. But it was around then, so it was 12 years ago. I'm talking myself in circles here, Dan, but because I've met Fred Bird, I'm going to go Fred Bird.
Now, the fact that the River City Rascals played, I'm not even sure if they're still around.
They are not. They are defunct.
Do you think there was it was just coincidence that there was a red bird near St. Louis?
Well, I was very clearly, the Cardinals mascot who was there, who was, the guest of honor. Often you'll see the Philly Fanatic shows up at the Jersey Shore Blue Claws.
So if
I see what you're saying.
Knew that that Fred Bird was the St. Louis Cardinals mascot, why would you choose that as the answer for the Louisville Redbirds mascot?
Do you know how the the San Diego chicken is not actually the San Diego chicken. He's like the famous chicken. When he performs now, he has no relationship to the Padres. He's his own character. He is just the famous chicken. I thought maybe, when I answered Fred Bird, I thought maybe Fred Bird is like a generic all-purpose Cardinals mascot for all Cardinals teams. And if you're going to be boring enough to call your minor league team the same thing as your parent club, you might just be boring enough to have the same mascot and nickname for that mascot. But I see where you're going with this, and I obviously can't change my answer. But my thinking was that like Fred Bird would be like an all-purpose Cardinals-ish mascot.
Okay.
So is the answer Lou Bird? The answer is Lou Bird, isn't it?
No, the answer is the one that you least figured was the correct answer, and you then said, so I should probably make that my answer, but you didn't heed your own advice there. So
Dan, I've had it with the Cardinals. All things Cardinals drive me crazy. I'm through pretending on this episode. The Cardinals drive me crazy. What dumb reason is Billy Bird the mascot for the Louisville Cardinals?
I have no idea why its name was Billy Bird, but I do want to say Fred Bird was and still is the St. Louis Cardinals mascot. Has been since 1979 and still going strong. Doesn't look a day older than he did back when he started in the late 70s. Interestingly,
probably had work done.
Go figure, the Double-A affiliate of the, let's see if you know this. Who's the Double-A affiliate of the St. Louis Cardinals?
Springfield Cardinals.
Right. And their mascot is named Louie. Okay. Now, not surprisingly, here in Louisville, we have the University of Louisville, who are the Cardinals, and their mascot is also named Louie, which makes sense and would have made sense for the Louisville Redbirds. Now, do you know what the low A Florida State League affiliate is of the Cardinals?
Is that the Palm Beach Cardinals?
That is correct. And their mascot name is Robbie the Redbird.
Of course.
Now, do you know what was the Cardinals' short season Appalachian League affiliate that is no longer minor league baseball? And they had to change all their team names. But do you know who was their Appalachian League short season affiliate?
I don't remember the town, but I'll bet you it was something Cardinals.
Johnson City Cardinals.
Oh, of course, yes.
Their mascot was named JC for Johnson City, the initials, but it's spelled out J-A-Y, one word, J-A-Y-C-E-E, Cap J, Cap C. But I'm assuming is no longer around because all the Appalachian League teams changed their name because they're no longer owned by their major league affiliates. So one thing I do want to mention about Billy Bird, have no idea why that mascot was named Billy Bird. I can say that I got to see him in person on a minor league road trip I went on that started in Louisville before I ever lived here. This was 1994, 30 years ago, with my best friend from college, George Mazzio. And we saw Billy Bird, and Billy Bird was great, really entertaining. But wouldn't you know, the University of Utah baseball team has a freshman pitcher named Billy Bird.
That's great.
Who, in addition to the 2 appearances he made as a freshman for the Utes this past season, he enjoys skiing, pickleball, and time with family and friends.
Well, I'm glad I got to learn about Billy Bird. Dan, this has been fun mostly, and enjoy the Studio Simon Stumper every single week, and I appreciate you coming on to talk about the work that you did on this brand. We will see you next week, as always, with another Studio Simon Stumper. Dan, have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
I hope you have an even better week. Looking forward to next week, Stumper. See ya.